It's time for the two-chart challenge. Now, this is where we try to get to the bottom of the big news issues of our day. They may not necessarily be on the front pages every day, but it's certainly the kind of thing that we discuss with our mates, isn't it? The kind of thing we need to have an answer to. And today I'm asking, does the UK need more immigration? So two expert voices are joining me now with facts to back up their opposing opinions. Let me introduce them to you. Social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Ehsan and the former Australian Foreign Minister Alexander Downer. Good morning, gentlemen. Lovely to see you. Right, Rakib, let me start with you. Do we need more legal immigration in this country?
I think that the one thing we really need to focus on is reducing our dependence on immigration when it comes to our economic development. I've said for some time that one of the greatest failures of Conservative-led governance over the past 12 years is boosting skills in our domestic workforce. And I think you saw that with the relatively short Truss government, where you heard ideas of trying to fuel or engineer quick growth through high levels of immigration. I just don't think that's the way forward in terms of trying to foster a more durable and stronger economy. And there's also the discussion in terms of what kind of impact that can have on social cohesion in modern Britain.
OK. Alexander Downer, just respond to that as your opening gambit.
Well, I don't have an opposite view to that. I mean, some of that I do agree with. I think what you need is a coherent and comprehensible immigration policy. So it's a good thing to have migrants if you want, for example, to inject more dynamism from abroad into the economy. You want to fill gaps, particularly amongst skilled workers in the workforce. Although it's true, you have to spend time training up your own people. Young British people need to be trained to fill special jobs, but it's a slightly different point. You can't do that overnight. So you need to work out very carefully how many migrants you need, and you also need to work out how many migrants you can absorb, because this programme this morning has focused very much on the problems of the NHS and the ambulance service. If you just bring people in willy-nilly into the country, you'll put all of those sorts of services and, in addition, education and the like, under huge pressure, not to mention housing and the effect that this all has on housing prices. So you need to have a coherent immigration policy, and you need to cap the number of migrants that are brought into the country so that you balance all of these things effectively.
OK, Rakib, the UK saw similar levels of migration compared to other high-income countries, hasn't it? Let's just have a look at a chart here. So what does this tell us, and what do we take from it in terms of the positives and the negatives of immigration?
Well, if I'm looking at that graph correctly, that's referring to the foreign-born population as a share of the overall population. I think that when looking at recent figures, the most recent net migration figure was 504,000, which is exceptionally high. But that's largely down to one-off factors such as bespoke resettlement routes for Ukrainians fleeing the Kremlin-led invasion of their country, and also a bespoke resettlement route for Hong Kongers fleeing Chinese state tyranny. And there was also the recent removal of the post-COVID flow of international students coming in after those travel restrictions associated with the pandemic were removed. But I think that more broadly, what we need to talk about is we need to have a well-structured immigration system which does address urgent gaps in the labour market, but we need to have a more longer-term approach in terms of the kind of economy that we have, in terms of economic sustainability. And that does involve an active industrial strategy, which includes boosting skills in the domestic workforce and reducing our dependence on immigration in the long term.
Alexander, so last year, net migration to the UK was unusually high. Do we know why that was?
Well, I think you just heard there were some one-off factors there. This was in reaction very substantially to COVID and all the restrictions of COVID, people coming back, students taking up positions that they couldn't take up because of COVID restrictions, and then the Ukraine war, the Ukrainian refugees, Afghan refugees after President Biden pulled out of Afghanistan. So there were those one-off factors which wouldn't necessarily be repeated. I wouldn't draw too many conclusions from that 1 year's figures. But I think what is wrong with the British immigration system is that it is insufficiently planned in terms of skilled migrants in particular. What sort of skilled migrants does the UK need? How many does it need? How many can it absorb? And let's not take more than the number of skilled migrants that we can absorb, so we don't push up housing prices, put the NHS under more pressure, put schools under more pressure. And let's take some refugees, let's resettle refugees, but let's stop people gaming the system and coming illegally, for example, across the Channel. But, you know, you do need to introduce a system of caps on immigration and a coherent strategy for immigration. That is the best way to do it. Then immigration can work for the country, can work for the economy, and the public will be satisfied with it. And the public won't be against immigration full stop. They are against chaotic immigration, unplanned, unregulated immigration. That's what the public don't want.
Rakib, what's the main reason that non-EU migrants come to the UK? Because that's where we've seen the increase in the last couple of years. Are they coming here mainly to study?
Well, that would be a massive factor in terms of their educational aspirations. And one of the things we do have in our country, we have a highly respected university system, especially across the Commonwealth. So that'll be one factor. And then, to be honest, there'll be other factors. Many non-EU migrants originate from countries where there isn't a great deal of social stability. Many of these countries are suffering from long-standing civil unrest, not particularly sharp forms of governance, and the economic opportunities are simply not there. So much of the reason will be for looking for a better life. But I think I'd often make this point that it's not Britain's role to maximise global welfare. It's something that I say quite often in my writings. But what it needs is a well-structured immigration system which contributes positively to our economy. And we have the social infrastructure in place to absorb newcomers so that they can live a proper life and contribute positively in the economic, cultural and social spheres of British life.
OK, well, a lot to agree on there, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Alexander Downer and Dr. Rakib Ehsan. Let me know what you think. GBViews@gbnews.uk. Now, my panel are still here.